Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the Caldor Fire. What I'm going to do here is just give a quick intro of what we're most likely going to be doing over the next few hours, and then we're going to jump over to the Cal Fire official update that should be starting in just a couple of minutes. But first, I just want to give the brief overview of what we're talking about. I am going to try to mention some of the other fires more than I was in yesterday's live stream, but once again, the big priority is the Caldor Fire because as you can see on the satellite imagery, we do have a fair bit of activity going on the Caldor Fire right now, but most importantly is its proximity to a large number of structures. The most recent fire perimeter map we have, you can see this eastern finger of the fire that is stretching closer to Kirkwood. I was just seeing some reports that there have been some spot fires moving closer to Kirkwood, so that's certainly going to be one of the areas we watch very closely over the next couple of hours. But then possibly the top priority in all of California right now is this section that has moved into Christmas Valley. This is what we were following for a number of hours last night when the spot fires came down from Echo Summit, established themselves into Christmas Valley, and then you can see how much it was able to grow overnight last night when we had those very low relative humidities. Now with this area, you can see South Lake Tahoe far off in the distance here, and between that fire and South Lake Tahoe, we have a very large number of structures, including the area around Myers. So that again is going to be one of the key areas that we watch throughout the next few hours, and I'll try to just keep trying to find the most recent information that I can. The reason it is such a critical forecast right now is because we do have that red flag warning over the entire Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire at this point. And with that red flag warning, we're seeing those southwesterly wind gusts up to 35 to possibly even 40 miles per hour. We'll have to check and see what the observation stations are actually showing. And those winds are being combined with some warm temperatures, but even more importantly, some very dry air as well, which dries out the fuels. So then when you combine those winds that can push the fire forward, but then also pick up burning embers and drop it into these dry fuels, that's where we get those same kind of spot fires that we were seeing last night that caused such challenges in this Christmas Valley area. So that is the quick summary of what we're going to be looking at. I do just want to see if the official update has started yet. It looks like it is live, so we're going to switch over to that. I'll stay in the live chat to answer any questions that might come up throughout this entire briefing that's going on. So you can try to ask me questions there, and then once this briefing is over, we will meet back on the same channel, and then we'll try to do what we were doing last night that was so effective, where I was going over as many resources as I could possibly find, but then it was also extremely helpful the way that all of you in the live chat and on Twitter were mentioning different cameras to look at, different questions, places that we should look, and then the most effective thing that hopefully we'll be able to do, I'll just briefly say it because it looks like we maybe have a minute. What was so helpful yesterday was when one of the hardest things for me to do is be able to scan through all the most recent important information. So what we had going on yesterday was people were sending me links to the various videos, different information about where spot fires were, where the fire had extended to, and that really helped to make the video much better because it was almost like we were building the information that we were using to figure out where this fire was as a team. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again over the next couple of hours. It was certainly helpful. One example of that was somebody sent a video of Highway 50 right here where it showed flames coming down this hill around just to the west of Highway 50 and then a spot fire popping up right here. And we saw it on the video that somebody sent me on Twitter, and then we were able to update this fire perimeter map, and you could actually see it happening, where you could see the flame or the perimeter coming down and then the spot fire being established in Christmas Valley. So looks like this still hasn't started, so we're just gonna keep our eye on it, just wait for it to start because we don't want to miss any of the important information that might be coming out of there. One thing that I usually am not the best at doing, but I'll try to get a bit better in this video today, is actually watching the live chat and trying to answer some questions you have. But again, what I was just saying, sometimes the best way to actually get in touch with me during one of these live streams is to just message me on Twitter, especially if you have important information or a link to an important video going on. But it looks like we're seeing some updates here, so we will transition to here. I will stay in the live chat to try to answer
in there for a good 2 or 3 days. It's getting day, so that's what we want. We want to see how it's going to react under some different conditions, and hopefully we'll get this blacked in here in the next couple days. As we move up along Fox, again, tactical patrols along Highway 50 there's two key spots that I still have concerns with along Highway 50. One is at Icehouse Road. We have a big unburned island that is starting to burn out in there, and we're keeping an eye on that. We're in there with hotshot crews, dozers, engine companies today, trying to cut this out direct and stop this whole large unburned piece from burning. The fear is that if we get a wind shift, it'll blow smoke over Icehouse Road, and wherever the smoke goes, typically that's where we end up chasing spot fires. Same scenario right here with this little triangle piece right above Kybers, right where it slopped over the north side of 50 a couple weeks ago. There's a little triangle piece. There's Silver Fork right there in the American River, so there's a confluence. The winds are super squirrely and they're swirling around, so the fire's heating up and it's pushing smoke over the road. Not as critical here because we have black that's right here, but yeah, it still is challenging. One thing we do have going on today is the control line that we had up here, up Wrights Lake Road, tying this basically into the wilderness, the desolation. The fire spotted outside of that control line today. It's making pretty substantial runs direct to the west. There's a strong, almost west wind on it. I'm sorry, it's running to the east. It's making a run towards Wrights Lake. We have multiple resources up there engaged, ready to do structure defense with the cabins around Wrights Lake. As we move up all the way into Tahoe, tons of resources on 50. Again, still in here doing a lot of prep along those structures, Camp Sacramento, all those areas. There are literally fire engines from here all the way down into Tahoe. Still doing, there's pockets, I just drove through there. There's a lot of pockets of unburned islands that are burning out, that are still closing in on cabins that are in there. So we're in there actively firefighting and defending the structures that are in there. I did see some damage to structures. The fire burned through there extremely fast, extremely hot, and we did the best that we could, and we're still in there. The head of the fire out here has not made it into Kirkwood yet. Our tactic down here, as you can see, we've got multiple dozer lines, and we're basically just trying to herd this fire, put a dozer line in between all these structures out here and the fire, and we can't control it. It's just we don't have any tools out there to stop the fire, so we result to hurting the fire away from structures and away from people, and that's what we're actively doing. As soon as the fire behavior settles down, it's not so critical, then we go in and find those opportunities with tractors and handline and firing, and we make an offensive attack to stop the fire. Same thing, we're doing structure defense in here, trying to herd the fire away from all these homes and all the infrastructure that's out here. As we move down, this is all out in no man's land. I mean, it's just rough country. The fire wasn't burning too active out here. As people know, it's super rocky, a lot of meadows and stuff like that. So it's out here just doing its thing. Yesterday, the fire got very active in this finger just west of Kirkwood. It burned very active again today, just as the head of this fire did. Our control line was 88. The area back here, we were able to fire all of this in over the last 24 hours, and we have good control over it. Although it looks like some fires on the bottom of 88 right here, it's not. We've held this piece, although on the big dog leg on 88 right here by Silver, the fire slopped over and some heavy fuels in there. We were making an attempt to go direct. The fire activity picked up in there a couple hours ago, and direct is no longer an option, so we've had to back off, and we got to give up a little bit more ground and go back in and get it when the fire behaves and calms down on us. Fire is not in Kirkwood proper, but we do have a structure defense group established in Kirkwood with 20 engines. Should the fire get in there, they're in there actively doing prep on those structures right now. Again, and everything tying back in along the heel of the fire is looking good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm incident meteorologist Jim Dudley with your weather update. So this afternoon, we saw the strong winds up on the ridges, and we had relative humidity values as low as 8%, upper single digits running all along the Highway 50 corridor and even down heading in towards South Lake. So lots of very dry air, lots of wind. So where do we go from here on this? We have a red flag warning remaining in effect, and that'll remain in effect through 11 o'clock tomorrow night. So Wednesday, all day, all night tonight, and all day tomorrow, we're in red flag conditions. And those red flag conditions are for low relative humidity and strong gusty winds, especially up over the ridges. So for tomorrow, we're gonna see, I'm optimistic we'll have some slight improvement in this very critical weather pattern. The humidities will come up just a little bit, and the wind will be a little bit lighter. Now, that's kind of a misnomer. We're still going to have gusty winds. I think today is the worst of the weather days. Tomorrow's going to be another bad weather day. I mean, I'll be honest with you. But it'll be the last one of those. There's a light at the end of this tunnel. Looking at all the weather data and in cooperation with the National Weather Service in Reno, the National Weather Service in Sacramento. We've been watching this very carefully, and it looks like on Thursday the winds are going to lighten up considerably, and that's going to make for a much better situation here on the fire footprint. So keep that in mind. We got to get through tonight and tomorrow. Things look better come Thursday. So that's your weather update. Have a nice evening.
Good evening, Stephen Vollmer, Fire Behavior Analyst with Incident Management Team 6. So with the strong winds that we've seen, with the low humidities that we've seen, and the high temperatures that we experienced today out on the fire, our probability of ignition was above 90%. In some places it was.
Dave Barker, Law Enforcement Liaison, Team 6. I want to talk about evacuations, warnings, and repopulation. So first I want to go over evacuation warnings. Those are areas we issue a warning at where we think the fire is getting close, but we're not telling you to get out. We're telling you to start preparing yourselves, making sure that your vehicle's ready, making sure that you've prepped things, grabbed clothes and items that you want to take with you, so you're not scrambling at the last minute. That's also the case for people who may have a hard time moving, limited movement, things that's going to take you a lot longer to get out. An evacuation order is, we want to get you out of that area for your safety and for the safety of firefighters so they can get in there with all of the resources to put out this fire. I want to bring you over to the evacuation repopulation map. We have issued a few new evacuation orders and warnings on the east end, out here over towards Nevada and Alpine County. You heard operations talk about the fire movement today in both the fingers up here going down. So we issued a couple warnings and orders in Alpine County. And we also coordinated with Nevada to issue some warnings and orders out in the Nevada area. Yesterday, we were able to do some repopulation in the southern area below Omo Ranch, and we're working with operations to get it clear so we can start working more repopulation efforts in that area. We continue to work with operations on when it'll be safe to start bringing repopulation up into the northern area of Camino and Pollock Pines. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, this time we're going to go ahead and conduct questions and answers. So one question we get, are there any structures that have been lost, is what the term was, and we refer to it as damaged or destroyed. So a few things we want to talk about on that topic. On this incident update sheet that goes out daily, we update that. Information's up there on this particular form. So right now, a single residence destroyed, 486. Commercial properties destroyed are 11. Other minor structures are 172, and structures damaged are 40. So that's what we put out every single day at 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Additionally, you can find out any information you want to know about structures that were damaged or destroyed through our tree link. You go to that QR code and you hover your phone over it, and it populates. Let me bring it up right now. It populates that 16 link, and at the very top, you're going to have damage map right there. That'll give you all the information you're looking for. Additionally, you can go to edc.gov.us as well, and it'll take you to the same place. We also want to remind everybody that the damage inspection process is a continuous process. We have damage inspection teams that go out there and they work throughout the entire incident as it's safe to do so. So sometimes it may seem like a lag period, but they are working very diligently and very hard for you to get you that information. And we understand it's important. So we thank you very much for understanding it's an ongoing process. And you should be notified by the county regarding that damaged or destroyed structure.
Good evening, Scott Rogers, Forest Service Agency Administrative Representative for the El Dorado National Forest. We had a question around the forest closure and how that relates to the fire order closure. So once we put this fire out and it's safe to do so and Team 6 has moved on, we do have a forest closure order still in effect. Once it's safe to enter the national forest, we will lift that as appropriate. But for those of you who do have, say, a recreation residence cabin or other special use permit holders, say for a ski area, those types of things, we do have an exemption process that you can contact your local administrator for, and we can get you into the forest and have you access your area. As well as others who have needs, they can contact their local forest administrator or district ranger, and we can take those on by a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Okay, I got some questions here. Updates on Strawberry, Kybers, and Wrights Lake. So a lot like I talked about, and I'll pop one. I pointed up here and said Kirkwood. I meant Heavenly. Thanks to whoever caught me on that one. The fire has not made it into Heavenly. Strawberry, the fires already went through Strawberry. It went through there 2 to 3 days ago, and we did the exact same tactic that we're employing out here. We just herded the fire through and around Strawberry, not through it, around Strawberry, and did a lot of great work in there. I'm sure there was some damage in there, but we give it our best fight every single time. Same thing with Kybers. Kybers still has kind of this little green island burning by it, and that's again a concern that we're mitigating by going out and trying to extinguish it. Wrights Lake right now, like I said earlier, Wrights Lake has the fire running at it right here up on the top, and we have a bunch of resources in there right now. We've already been in there multiple days ago when the fire first spotted on the north side of 50. We were in there with resources doing structure prep, and then now we're back in there to defend those structures. We also had moved about 10 or 11 tractors up Wrights Lake Road again to start getting out in front of that thing, trying to stop the spread to the north and the west. Yep, I did say Kirkwood and I meant Heavenly earlier. Will the Caldor Fire meet the Tamarack? So again, talking back about herding and corralling the fire, sometimes when it's burning extreme, that's all we can do. And yes, we have operations maps with the Tamarack fire on it, and yes, we are going to try and steer it into the Tamarack fire. It's a fresh burn, and if we get it steered into there, whatever portion we get turned into it, that basically stops the spread of the fire. So that's a very valid tactic that we're actively trying to do. Kirkwood Lake looks good. The fire is not near it yet, but it is burning towards it. We're trying everything we can to keep all the fire on the north side of 88. Right now I've got several hundred acres out in a steep rocky spot with a lot of timber, and it's a challenge under the current burning conditions, but we have the finest firefighters out there that got booted out of there by extreme fire behavior, and as soon as that settles, we'll knock it down with aircraft, and we'll be re-engaged on that tonight 100% with all the equipment that we have out there. Christmas Valley Christmas Valley, we herded the fire around Christmas Valley last night. There's still fire backing down in different spots at Christmas Valley, but we have dozer line and a ton of resources up there. We will do everything we can. I don't want one single structure to get impacted. Same thing, Sly Park is looking really good. We've done, I just can't explain the incredible job and how firefighters took that fire down Sly Park, literally burned in people's backyards, and it was successful and stopped that fire right there. We're just mopping it up, and we will get folks back in there as fast as we safely can do it. Silver Lake, the fire's right at Silver Lake. They're on 88. I will tell you we're using Silver Lake as one of our primary water sources for rotary wing helicopters that are out here dropping water on the fire's edge. So Silver Lake is seeing a lot of attention from us. And that is the last of my questions. Thank you very much.
Eric Palmberg, PIO for the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. First question we got here they want me to address is evacuations in the Nevada area. So as dictated on the map here, we have two sections in Nevada, Upper Kingsbury and Lower Kingsbury. They're on the map here, as well as they will be shown on the map on the CAL FIRE update that goes out tonight at 7 p.m. As well as there's a particular description on those documents that detail the streets and the exact area if you can't really tell where your residence is on that map. Second question is related to getting a pass to get back in your house. There's a lot of rumors out there that there are passes to get back in your house. These passes do not exist. If you live in an evacuated order area, there are no passes. There is some confusion, I think, with passes regarding agriculture operations. If you have an agriculture operation, if you're a rancher with cattle, vineyards, up in the Apple Hill area growing fruits and whatnot, you can go to the agriculture department. They certify that you are a certified grower or agricultural business in the county. Then that goes to the sheriff's office, and then we can actually get you in for a period of time to harvest your crops, tend to your cattle, things like that. But there are no passes for individuals to get in any evacuated areas. Timeline on repopulation, I think it's been touched on several times. There is no exact timeline on any repopulation. I can attest and tell all of you now that every day here in fire camp, there's 5 to 6 meetings. All of these professionals, CAL FIRE, the Forest Service, CHP, PG&E, EID Water, there are meetings continuously throughout the day, constantly evaluating when we can repopulate and when we can't repopulate. Everybody's making every effort to get you back in your homes as soon as possible. And when these people determine that it is safe to get back in our homes, we will put that information out. We will get you in there as fast as we can. Another question regarding that is Grizzly Flats. Question about repopulating Grizzly Flats. I'll kind of take that last topic to the next level. Grizzly Flat area, obviously we lost a lot of infrastructure in there. Phone lines, power lines. PG&E, Comcast, Verizon, all of these people, EID Water, Grizzly Flats Water, they're all in these meetings every day discussing how to get these systems back in place to get everybody back into their homes. So as soon as it is possible, everybody's making every effort, and there's crews up there when they can be up there. We're doing everything we can to get you back in your homes as fast as we can. I think it's already been touched on. Several questions here about Camino and Pollock Pines. Again, these discussions are occurring every day. As soon as it is safe to do so, we will get you back in your homes. We know it's a difficult time. We ask for your patience, and we're doing everything we can from the Sheriff's Office, CAL FIRE, the Forest Service. Everybody involved is making every effort to get you back in there. PG&E, have we started bringing power back into evacuated areas? I do know that PG&E has been doing a lot of work in the Grizzly Flats area. They had to tear down a lot of the infrastructure with their power lines that were damaged, and I know they have been putting in new poles. I can't speak to the numbers, but I know that PG&E is very involved in the Grizzly Flats area. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
The two teams are not going to talk, and we're going to be in close coordination. It's still one fire. We're just going to manage the span of control a little bit due to the vast difference in time frames to get around the fire. But we will be standing side by side, making decisions together that affect the entire fire. With that, have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Buenas tardes, Ricardo Tlapala. Vocero, el
Alrighty, so I'll just plug my microphone back in here. And once again, apologies for any buffering that might have happened throughout the course of the video. Hopefully that doesn't happen throughout the course of this video as much as it was yesterday. I just made a couple changes that I think may be able to help. One thing that I will be trying to do is not having the other screen on with the live chat. So if I don't see any questions popping up, it's because I don't have the live chat open on my other screen right now, because I'm trying to save all the Wi-Fi that I can for just this screen so that we can really focus, or that I can focus on trying to get the information out there, and then the computer hopefully won't be buffering as much. But just because there were some buffers there, I will go over some of the key things that they said throughout that update. I think the best way to do that would be to maybe use Google Earth here. So I'm going to zoom on out and go over some of the different areas they were talking about. So let's just get a good view of what we're looking at. We have Lake Tahoe up here, the Caldor Fire right here. Now, one area where they talked about that there has been some great progress was on the southern edge and this western finger right there. Remember, that was an area of the fire that was actually creating a lot of challenges for Cal Fire in the past. If we look at this map, is a good way to show it, because you can see that there's a large amount of unburnt fuel in this area, and the reason this was such a concern is, one, if there's still fuel, that means the fire could still extend right there. Two, parts of this fire perimeter kept jumping over the containment lines and basically threatening all of these structures that we have in this area, also on this other side as well. But did sound like that was one part of their update where they were feeling relatively confident, and I'm interested to see the most recent containment map. So this actually isn't the most, at least not as recent as the one they just showed in that update. I think maybe they just haven't updated this website yet. Yeah, it's still 10 hours ago here. So 10 hours ago, you can see, or you're about to see once this officially loads up. I'll close some of the heavy duty links that we're using right there. So just in the meantime, one thing I can point out on this map is where the hot spots have been the last couple of days. Again, I'm not going to be using this map all that much throughout this video because the hot spots themselves don't really paint the picture of what's going on. For example, it looks like it just tore completely through Christmas Valley there, but as I'll show in a second, that actually wasn't the case. But one useful thing that this map is useful for is, one, being able to see where the recent hotspots were. You can see majority of where you see that red color, that's where the more recent hotspots have been, are on that northeastern section of the fire and that eastern section right there. And you notice barely seeing any of those on this entire western half of the Caldor Fire. The big reason for that ties into what we've been talking about over the last few days. It's those southwesterly winds that have been picking up in the afternoons, and especially the last 2 days where we've been under that red flag warning. Actually, Dixie Fire has been under that red flag warning as well. And because of that, because of those southwesterly winds, you can see majority of the growth has been to the northeast. This has been a pretty textbook fire for how whatever direction the wind is blowing is most likely the direction the fire is going to be moving. So just zooming in here, this actually did update from the other one that I had pulled up. So now we are seeing that containment that they picked up in the northern section of that western finger right there. They said that there was some amazing work done right there. I believe that's by Sly Park Road, which again is one of the huge priorities on this fire because you can see the thousands of structures on the western edge there. So it was good to hear that there was some good news coming out of that area. If we look at this map as well, you can see containment around that whole southern area and most of that area as well on the northwestern edge, where makes sense where that's not where we've seen many hotspots recently. Now, where the problems on this fire have been, where the challenges have been, is clearly on this northeastern, or basically the entire eastern half of this fire. Now, the key places that we're going to be following throughout the course of this video one spot that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on, and I'll certainly be going to Twitter every maybe 15 minutes to try to see if you guys have sent me any updates or any videos. Again, you can send those to me at Holt Hanley Weather, and then I'll be able to pull those videos up and be able to collect any intel that you guys might be sending in that we can then include in this video as we try to figure out and piece together what's really going on this fire in real time. But no matter what, that is going to be one of the top spots that we're watching. Kirkwood right there, you can see where the fire perimeter extended to yesterday. This is one part of the fire that we were actually following in real time yesterday. I believe when I started my live stream, the fire perimeter was maybe right about here. And then when I re-downloaded some of the new fire perimeter data, we could see that some spot fires had jumped over Highway 88. And then as of right now, it looks like those spot fires have now joined with the overall fire, and it has crossed Highway 88 there. And I went on Twitter briefly before this video, and a few of the updates that I was seeing is that some spot fires were pushing closer towards Kirkwood, and we actually did hear in that Cal Fire update that they had some crews trying to put in some lines here, but because of the advance of that fire, and I believe because of some of those spot fires that they had to pull back, they're going to have to just basically wait for more favorable conditions to try to actually focus on putting some containment lines in there. Now, that's certainly an area that we're going to be watching, but I think maybe the top spot that we're going to be watching is once again Christmas Valley right here. Last night we were actually watching this fire come down right on the eastern side of Echo Lake, basically from Echo Summit all the way along Highway 50 right here. We were watching this fire come down this hill, and then what ended up happening was those southwesterly winds, those strong winds we've been talking about for about 5 days now, were able to pick up some of those burning embers and drop them over Highway 50. I believe at one point they were hoping that they'd be able to use Highway 50 almost as a containment type line and hopefully stop the fire in its tracks right there, but with those strong wind gusts, it's very likely to get spot fires. We heard in that Cal Fire update that they're getting some spot fires as far away as a mile, which you can imagine how frustrating and difficult that has got to make it to fight this fire if you have some great containment lines in place and you have a good strategy set up, and then the winds just pick up one burning ember, toss it a mile past your containment line, drop it into those critically dry fuels where there's about a 90% chance of ignition, and then it's like the containment line wasn't even there and the fire has jumped across the valley. And that was the other thing that we were following throughout the live stream last night was first we were seeing it spot just right on the other side of Highway 50 and then we actually saw some of those spot fires moving back up the hill right here. So it looks, when you look at these maps, it looks like the fire maybe just moved down, but in a lot of these cases you actually get spots down here and then fires like to move uphill. The reason for that is because as the flames tilt over, they preheat some of those fuels, and then it just starts taking off uphill. And that was something we actually saw in some of those videos we were looking at yesterday. But then we continued to have those southwesterly winds that were picking up burning embers. We got a couple of those dropped on the eastern side of Christmas Valley, and then with those continued northeast winds, you can see how it just continued to push farther and farther towards I think I just said northeast winds. With the southwesterly winds, it continued to push the fire farther and farther towards the northeast. So to drive that point home, I can click off the most recent satellite data. You can see that's, actually we can go back and look at the full progression. So that's where it was when I started my live stream yesterday. It was pushed up against Echo Lake right there. Highway 50 was still good. Christmas Valley was still good. Just zooming out to get your bearings. That's the overall Caldor Fire. That's Lake Tahoe right there. So that's what we looked like at the start of the live stream yesterday. And then about maybe halfway through the live stream yesterday, we saw it start to push down over Highway 50, and then we started to see some evidence of it actually jumping over Christmas Valley with some spot fires on both sides of the canyon. And then overnight, this was one of the big things that I ended last night's live stream with. I was talking about how the fire behavior was going to be able to continue into the overnight hours, because what you'd like to see overnight is your relative humidity jump up to maybe 60-80%, but in this case it wasn't rising out of the 20s. So we had very dry conditions last night. We also get winds that blow directly through this valley towards Lake Tahoe during the nighttime hours. You can imagine how some of those winds are funneled through the valley, and what that was basically able to do, I'll just get right over this so we have a good view of this. With those continued winds overnight, you can watch what happens to this spot fire right here during the overnight hours. It continued to move farther up towards the northeast. Now, this is where I think some of the good news comes in, and also where just an absolute testament to how unbelievable our wildland firefighters are. When I ended the live stream last night, we didn't actually have any information, or at least we couldn't find any, on what was actually happening within a lot of the structures within Christmas Valley. We'd seen a couple videos of some structures being destroyed, maybe up on the Echo Summit type area, but we really didn't know what was going on here. All we knew was that there were spot fires on both sides of the valley that were fully established. We could see the flames in the videos, and so we ended the live stream last night quite worried about this entire area, but just looking at what this fire perimeter actually shows, and again, this isn't live fire perimeter data, it's just the most recent data that we do have, since they were able to do one of those infrared flights, but I believe this is still holding true based on what they said in that CAL FIRE update. They said that I want to make sure I'm quoting this right, but it sounded like he said they hadn't lost a structure yet in Christmas Valley. Again, if you heard differently than that, then maybe message me that on Twitter, as I'll be able to see it there. Again, apologies if anybody is posting questions in the live chat. I'm trying to purposely only have one screen going right now so that it just doesn't buffer as much as usual. So apologies if anybody's been asking any questions. I've just been looking at my computer. But yeah, I just wanted to look at the live. I see someone says, Holt, there's still no L in the word both. I think, I was laughing about that comment yesterday, and I know that my entire dad's side of the family says both, so I think it might be maybe a Montana thing. That's where my dad's side of the family is from. If anybody knows differently, you might be able to correct me on that. But again, I did just want to check the live chat right there to make sure that my sound was on and everything was working. That is one thing I've said before, is I once did a 40-minute live stream and I didn't have sound the whole time, so I will try to every once in a while open the live chat back up to see if everything's going all right, but I won't be able to look at it as much in the past because I want to make sure we have as much Wi-Fi for this screen as we can so we don't run into some of that buffering that we had yesterday. So just picking back up what I was just talking about, amazing work done by all the wildland firefighters out there last night. You can see how intense this fire looked on both sides of Christmas Valley, but notice where all the streets are. You can see that where the streets are is almost exactly where the fire perimeter stops. So if we were to zoom into one of these areas, you can see it looks like there's a house right there, house right there, house right there, and the fire perimeter stops just before those houses. You can actually see it even better on this other side. So let's see if I can twist this around. Still trying to learn how to drive Google Earth right here. So right here, this is a perfect example. Again, zooming out, so now we're a bit flipped around at this point, but I do just want to show this because it perfectly illustrates what I was trying to say. Amazing work done by our wildland firefighters last night, where you can see all of these streets right here. So you imagine all along that we have houses just in rows right there, but they were able to, what they said in that update was they called it herding the fire. So they basically just kept the fire out of those communities and most likely saved I would imagine maybe hundreds to maybe even over 1,000 structures with that amazing work they were able to do last night in Christmas Valley and in this area as we get closer towards Myers as well. So now, while that was the case, getting a little flipped around here again, while that was the case for last night, again, this is going to be the key area that we have to follow throughout the entire course of this video. We are already seeing some reports of some spot fires happening. We know how critical the fire weather forecast is. It's the continued southwesterly winds, and actually not even continued, I should say strengthened southwest winds. We actually have some stronger winds tonight than we had in previous days. So definitely going to have to keep a close eye on this area right here to make sure that those southwest winds aren't able to push this fire into Christmas Valley. We also know that there's a wind shift coming tonight where it's going to transition to more southerly winds. So we want to make sure that that fire doesn't make a move towards Myers. But based on what this map showed as of this morning, I would say I'm feeling more confident than I was when I at least went to bed last night when we didn't really know what was going on here, because unfortunately we have seen situations even throughout this season where a fire does just completely move through a town. We actually saw that on the Caldor Fire in the Grizzly Flats area. We saw it on the Dixie Fire in the Greenville area. So that was the big question mark last night, was Christmas Valley going to be another one of those situations? And as of right now, it doesn't look like it. But again, the fire activity, if we look at the satellite imagery, it does look like it's starting to pick up once again. This is something I've said over and over again throughout this season, that this season's really weird because you usually see maybe your most active fire behavior at around maybe 4 p.m. That's when it's the hottest time of the day, it's the driest time of the day, it's usually the windiest time of the day, and the part of the day that's the most unstable. But this, it seems like almost every update and forecast video I've done, the most active parts of or times for the fire are maybe around 7 to 9 o'clock in the evenings, in some cases even after the sun drops. So very interesting to see that throughout this year, and you can see that it does look like that trend is continuing as of right now. You can see what looks to be a pyrocumulus popping up. It almost looks like that was popping up near Nevada. I haven't seen any reports that it's officially crossed into Nevada yet. I don't think that it has. So I imagine that pyrocumulus maybe was just being pushed by those southwesterly winds. We might be able to see it a bit better if we look at the fire itself. So in that orange color right there, it does look like it's getting fairly close to the Nevada state line right there. One thing I will say is it looked like it was really active maybe around 3 or 4 o'clock. It's hard to tell if that northern section is calming down or if we just can't see it because the smoke is so thick. It basically paints two completely different pictures either way if you look at it that way. We might have, yeah, and I would imagine the behavior is not calming down right now. So I imagine it looks like that orange color is cooling down just because maybe the smoke is so thick over it. But one actually thing I should also mention is what's going on in the Dixie Fire. This was actually and again, if you're in the Dixie Fire area, I believe there have been some new evacuation orders put in place. I can actually try to pull up that map. I believe I still have it somewhere in here. There, that's the structure status. There's the evacuation warnings. Oh, and then we can also look at that damage assessment map for the Caldor Fire. It sounded like they might have had some updates on it, so I'm very interested to see if they've updated the eastern half of the fire. The last time we looked at it, they still only had data from the Grizzly Flats area. So yeah, looking at the Dixie Fire, it looks like there have been some new evacuation orders and warnings put in place. The red color is an evacuation order where you leave immediately. The yellow color is evacuation warning, where you should get ready to leave. Hopefully I still have the link for this in the description, even though that I plan for this just to be a Caldor update. Now, with that being said, so this, as of starting this video, was the only evacuation map that I could actually find. On the Caldor Fire itself, I believe you can access all the different evacuation warnings and orders that are happening on the Cal Fire page, and I do have the link for that in the description. So clearly I can't individually go through every single one of these orders and warnings. So in the past, I do usually show this map just to give a brief look at the fact that we do have evacuation orders covering all of South Lake Tahoe, which means mandatory evacuations in that area. But we also know that this map isn't 100% correct anymore, because we now have those evacuation warnings and orders spreading into Nevada as well. So I think, so it's actually kind of useful, I think, when I'm looking for links, because it can show you guys how to, or exactly how I find some of the important wildfire data that we look at. So it's almost kind of the teaching to fish. So one of the best ways to get information on the Caldor Fire, you go to Facebook, and then go to Cal Fire Amador El Dorado unit, and then it'll load up in a second. And one thing you can do is just scroll through here. They usually have the updates, the one that we just watched. They usually have some of the news releases. This is one thing that I always read before doing these videos. It's the incident update right here. Oh, it's actually in Spanish. I always just look at the numbers, so I wonder if that I had previously looked at the one in Spanish thinking it was in English. So right there, that should be the English one. This is an important thing to look at right now. So, oh, it's still in Spanish, but numbers are all the same. So acres burned is at 191,000 acres. Structures threatened is 33,000 right there. I think that is one of the big numbers that we're going to stay updated with throughout the course of this video to see if they increase that at all. But again, just coming back here, what we're doing is looking for the most recent evacuation order map, because it did look like it had extended into Nevada. So what you do here is you go to the Cal Fire Amador El Dorado unit, go to their Facebook page, and then right here there's a link. It's their pinned post. It's Linktree right there. Right here, information, structure damage map. We can check that out in a second. So I believe that that is the same evacuation map that we're already looking at. Let's just see if it's been updated. But I think that that's the same one that we were looking at in the other video. Okay. So zooming out here, yeah, so it looks, if anybody has the link to the other evacuation warnings that show it extending into Nevada, again, you can send that to me on Twitter and I'll be able to pull it up in this video. And actually, the next thing I will do is check Twitter to see what posts you guys have been sending me, because again, that's one of the best places for me to get the most recent information, is to have all of you guys finding some good stuff and then me being able to present it and then match it up with some of the other maps as well. But I do just want to look at the structure damage map, because they did mention this in their video, and I want to see if it's been updated. The last time that we looked at it, it was only the Grizzly Flats area. So I want to see if they've included any of that northeastern push of the fire that we have had recently. So it does look like we have some new information here, and it looks like it's actually mostly good news with that new information that came in. So right there, this is mostly looking at Kybers right there. So just looking at Google Earth, if we look at Kybers. It'll get us back oriented. So you can see this was one of the places that we were very concerned about because there are a large amount of structures in this area. If we want to just see how many structures there actually are, we'll go back down to the Caldor Fire. And I believe it's right about there that we're looking, so we'll turn on. Actually, I want to make sure we're looking at the right spot. So right there, you can see, I'll turn the fire activity off so you can see how many structures we had in this area. All those orange dots right there are structures. So when we saw the fire come through, you can see where the fire perimeter is. It looked like the fire completely went over all of those structures. And that's just another testament to the amazing work that firefighters have been able to do on this fire. When we look at the better fire perimeter data, you can see that they were basically able to stop it right before it got into that Kybers area. And then if we match that up with the damage assessment map, anywhere where you see a black house is where they were able to save it. So right there, that shows where the fire perimeter is. So it's amazing to see that within that fire perimeter, we have mostly black houses showing up right there. So it looks like we have maybe one house that was destroyed if we actually look at the photo of it. So it did look like the fire was able to get into that area, but again, amazing work done. I was not expecting it to look that good as those damage assessment teams started to come back. So that's some amazing work right there. Now we're just going to have to wait on some of the new information that's been coming out in this entire area from Phillips to Echo Lake down into Strawberry Canyon, because we did see some videos of some houses burning even in the live stream yesterday. So we are going to have to just wait for those damage assessment teams to come back in those areas to see what kind of damage might have happened last night. But you can see majority of that structures destroyed number on the Caldor Fire is in that Grizzly Flats area, which if we look when that happened, it was actually right when the fire first started. So this shows the fire progression map. Where you have that green color, that's where it burned on the August 15th, 16th, and 17th. And you can see how it went through Grizzly Flats. That's where most of the structures that have been destroyed on this fire are located. And then ever since then, where you transition into that red color and into the purple color, that's where it's mostly been growing recently, with all of that purple color there being the August 28th, 29th, and the 30th. And just zooming in there, you can see the key spots that we're going to be following over the next couple of hours. The finger that crossed Highway 88 there and is now threatening Kirkwood, and then also the area that was able to jump over Christmas Valley, and we got some spots on that side. So that does remind me that we do have some very key priorities that we're looking after. So first, I'm just going to take a quick look at the live stream, and then I'm going to check Twitter to see if you guys have sent any links, and then if not, I can even just look for some important links or videos to try to figure out exactly what is going on the ground. So it sounds like somebody said they're evacuating Kingsbury area. That's important to know. I see some people said check Twitter. I'll do that in definitely 1 second. And I did see somebody also mentioned that they'd like to see a fuel map. I don't know. The two fuel maps that I could show you that I actually always look at before making these videos is you go fuel moisture map, because that's really the important thing when it comes to your fuel, is how much moisture is in them. I usually try to look at all of them, but just in the essence of time, we'll just look at 100-hour fuels, which are about the size of your wrist. And you can see that basically paints the picture of why we're having this critical situation, not only on the Caldor Fire, but throughout all of California. Critically dry fuels throughout that entire Tahoe area with fuel moistures less than 5%. So just going along with that, you might not know how that compares with what fuel moisture values usually are. 5% probably doesn't mean that much to you. So I'll take you to the Fire Weather Research Laboratory. I actually helped collect this data. I actually just put together a story on how we collect this fuel moisture data, and you can find that on my Twitter account that I produce for KSBW. But basically what we do is we go into the Santa Cruz Mountains, we cut some plants, we weigh the plants, we dry them out in an oven for 24 hours, we weigh them again, and then based on the difference in weight, it tells you how much water was evaporated out of the plants, and it tells you how much moisture was in those plants. So it makes sense that the drier those plants are, the worse wildfires are going to be. And just looking at this map, it shows why we're having such a critical wildfire season. The green values right there are the average values since we started collecting this fuel moisture data in 2009. The red line was the previous record low values, and that blue line is the fuel moisture data that we've been collecting this season. So you can see that since about April, we have, since about May, maybe May 15th, we've been seeing the driest fuels that we have ever recorded. Now, one other map I could show to continue to drive this point home of how critically dry the fuels are, we can look at the drought map, where you can see that 85% of California is currently in that extreme drought category, where you have that bright red color right there. And then if that wasn't enough, many of the trees in this area as well have been killed due to bark beetles, drought stress, and other kinds of disease as well. If we look at the tree mortality viewer, this might actually be one of the big factors going on. This was a big factor, I believe, on the Tamarack Fire and certainly the Creek Fire last year. If we zoom in here, don't believe they have a legend, but the color shows you what percentage of the trees have been killed, and you can see that in this whole area where the Caldor Fire has been burning so much, we have a very large amount of trees that I believe this really picked up in that big drought we had between 2014 and 2017, where the trees just became weakened because there simply wasn't enough water, and then bark beetles were able to take advantage of those weakened trees and basically killed millions of trees throughout the Rockies and the Sierras. That's a big factor that I haven't talked about yet that is playing a big role on this fire. But again, that's enough of the kind of science tangent so far. So right now what we should do is try to figure out exactly what's going on in the fire. Best way to do that is for me to close some links to make sure that we don't buffer too much here, but then also check on Twitter, where I know some of you have been posting some good links so far. So, I hope this is the new evacuation map that we were looking for and couldn't find earlier. It looks like it might be. So if not, this is still a terrific link to go to. Yeah, so we have all the links. I believe this is the one for going into Caldor Fire Tahoe evacuation orders. Yeah, and it has the whole link right there. You can also find that at Cal Fire and also on insaweb.com. So thanks. And that does look like it's douglascountynevada.gov. So perhaps some of the other links that I was sharing don't actually include any Nevada evacuation orders. So that's actually a huge disclaimer that I should say. The map I show, I know doesn't show the Nevada disclaimers, but the Cal Fire links probably don't as well, since that is just for California. So, looks like air operations have been suspended over Myers Caldor Fire due to smoke. So thank you very much. So this is just a perfect example. This is a great way to do these videos. Again, when I'm looking at maps and trying to explain the maps, I don't have time to also be scrolling through Twitter to try to find the most relevant posts. So it is very helpful when you guys send this kind of information in, because that's a critical thing to know. Air operations suspended over Myers Caldor Fire due to smoke. So I would say that isn't too surprising, just based on how much smoke we do see coming off of the Caldor Fire. Zooming in here, you can see we already had some active fire behavior early this morning. As I was saying, last night it was able to continue because we had such low relative humidity. Basically burned all the way through the night. I did that concise update, this concise, by that I mean 40 minutes instead of 4 hours. But I believe I filmed that at about 9 a.m. this morning, and we were already seeing a large amount of fire activity, and throughout the day you can see it's just continued to pick up with a massive amount of smoke coming off the fire in the last hour. So it looks like some very unhealthy air quality going into Nevada. But because of that, it looks like air operations have been grounded. Another way to see that, we can go to flightradar24.com. I always forget about this website, but it is a great one to use to get an idea of any aircraft on the fire. While it's loading, I could take a sip of water. So, interestingly, it looks like we might have some helicopters and planes still relatively over the fire. So that one just seems like it's going in circles right there. This one right here. Let's see the path this one's taken. Is that going right over Kirkwood, maybe? Interesting. So that one might be dropping some water on Kirkwood. We have a helicopter right there. So not exactly sure if these are recon planes that we're looking at, trying to figure out where the fire perimeter is, or if it's actually some planes that are able to drop some retardant, drop some water as well. We'll just have to try to look, and sometimes in the alert wildfire videos that we look at, you can actually see the planes. So it looks like that's where some of the other evacuation orders are in place. And for the new link that I'm using with the Google Earth, I actually do still need to ask if I am allowed to share that link. Again, I got it from a wildfire researcher, but I believe it's the same link that the operations actually use, and I have shared a couple times. I've shared links before and then actually crashed. I've crashed, I think, 3 websites before because I shared them while I was live and a bunch of people were watching, and then the websites ended up crashing. So since that is the same link that the operations uses, I want to make sure that it is a public link before I share that and possibly crash the website. So I will try to get back to you on that information there. And right here, this would actually be very interesting to hear. Let's hear what he.
Off of this dozer line, set a back. We're up here off of Apache here in South Lake Tahoe, where just a short time ago, the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service firefighters out here, off of this dozer line, set a backfire here to protect these homes. You can see homes here right off of Apache, and they knew the fire was coming in this direction, so while the winds are favorable, they set a backfire. That is, you can see now the wind taking this fire away from the homes. I'll step out of the way here. You can see taking the fire away from the homes, and right now burning this area out while they can, because they know the head of the fire is coming this way. So they're taking advantage of these favorable winds to burn this area out and protect the homes, using fire to fight fire and essentially create a defensible space here. As you can see this dozer line here behind me. They put in a dozer line, a hose line, and then homes right in between them. And meanwhile, right here behind me, these trees continue to torch out as they're just letting this area burn now, again, while the winds are favorable, pushing this fire away from the homes.
Wow, so that was a great link right there. Thanks for sending that in, Trish. It looks like we have another one, so let's just check this one as well. Looks like positive news on the Caldor Fire. We are not seeing structure loss as we drive around. That's something that I was hinting at earlier in this video, but I certainly didn't want to confirm it. But again, that was 4 hours ago, and we have seen a large increase in activity, so we will look for more updates on if there has been some new structure loss since this was posted, but I am interested to hear what he has to say.
They had the wind in a favor. I just want to give you an update from a location we spent a little time at yesterday in Christmas Valley. This is near the intersection of Santa Claus Road and Highway 89. There's a good pocket with some, maybe a couple dozen homes or so in here. And I just want to show you how close the Caldor Fire came to getting some of these structures. You can see the blackened forest just right up into the backyards. This took a lot of work from fire crews. They had the wind in a favorable direction, which helped them out, but I don't see any structures lost down here, which is just incredible given the way big flame lengths that we were seeing last night. But you know, this whole neighborhood looking pretty good right about now. So a little positive news here from the Caldor Fire. Hopefully it stays this way.
All right, and I think the way he wrapped that, So I think the way he wrapped that up was the perfect way to wrap that up, was hopefully this way, because again, that was about 4 hours ago. And just given the current situation of where that fire is, where the winds are blowing, we have those southwest winds that we did hear some reports that there have been some spot fires pushing this area of the fire closer towards Kirkwood. We did hear in that Cal Fire update earlier, again, that was about an hour ago, but they were saying that as of an hour ago, the fire itself is not in Kirkwood, but they did say that some crews that were trying to put in a dozer line here had to pull back because of some spot fires, and perhaps the fire itself continuing to push forward that you can see did pass Highway 88 there. Now, the other spot that we're going to continue to try to figure out exactly what's going on is that whole Christmas Valley area, but so far we haven't seen any updates that show large amounts of structure loss, which is very encouraging to see as of right now. So what I'm hoping is that that continues to be the case, but that's the reason we're doing such a long live stream for this entire event, because it does look like the fire has been picking up over the last couple of hours. So we do need to keep a close eye on it, because based on where that fire perimeter is, based on the direction the winds are blowing, and just how critical the fire weather forecast is with those relative humidity as low as 8%, they said that. Anytime you hear relative humidity in the single digits, that's about as extreme as you ever hear that kind of value. And then with the strong winds as well, those 35-mile-per-hour wind gusts causing that red flag warning, it's going to be a critical next couple of hours that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on this fire. So just want to scroll through here again, see if there's any other links to look at. Oh, so that actually reminds me of Wharf S Fire. So we can check that out. Again, just a heads up, when I go to load this, again, this is loading one of the top wildfire simulation models in the world, and it uses probably thousands, if not even a million data points. So when I loaded this up in my live stream last night was when the screen started to buffer and we lost connection. But I'm just going to try it and we'll see what happens, because it is always worth it to be able to look at this, because it's a simulation of where that fire is going to burn over the next 2 days. So if you lose me, then I'll actually keep the live chat open while I'm doing this, just so I can see if you do lose me. Apologies again if anybody's been asking questions in the live chat. I've been purposely just having one screen going to try to make it so we don't buffer as much as yesterday. And it actually looks like we have a new simulation since the one that we looked at this morning. Again, we update this out of the San Jose State Fire Weather Research Laboratory twice a day for both the Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire. And it usually takes a second to load here, so I can just briefly explain what it is that we're about to look at. So it takes where those active hotspots are, and then it combines it with the fuel, topography, and weather variables to simulate where that fire is going to burn over the next 48 hours. So with that being said, and actually helps this model stand out from all the other ones, the reason that it is one of the top wildfire models in the world is it does a Alrighty, I see somebody just said, okay, all good. How to lose 400 viewers in a matter of minutes. Alrighty, we are back. So that is some great news. I'm going to turn off my phone Wi-Fi as well. But again, we knew that that was one of the risks going into that. That was what caused the big buffer yesterday. Again, that kind of shows how much information is going into that WRF-S fire model. The fact that there's so many different fuel, weather, topography, fire, radiative power, wind, all kinds of variables that it's calculating, that there's so much calculation being done in that model that it basically can shut down your internet if you try to play it while live streaming. So I'll just try to make sure that we are still good here, but I was seeing some reports that we are back, so it does look good. Alrighty, so key thing, I'm actually glad that I did play it, even though we lost about maybe 400 people out of the chat because of that buffering, but I am glad that I got to see it because it did remind me of something crucial here. And I did also love what somebody posted here, is that I should just take a screen video of WRF-S fire in the future and then just play the video in these updates, because obviously I can't load the whole model and then play it during these live streams. Just too much for the computer at that point. So I am glad that we watched it though, because basically I don't know when it started to buffer, so I can just summarize what it was showing. It basically showed that with those southwesterly winds, this section was going to continue to move closer towards Kirkwood, and then surprisingly it also had a large amount of growth around this area of the fire, which is something that they mentioned in the Caldor Cal Fire update, that they were having some trouble right there. So interesting that the model predicted that as well, but the majority of the growth that the model was showing was on this northeastern finger right here, the one that started as a spot fire yesterday, and then where it started as a spot fire, the southwest winds picked up the burning ember from Echo Summit, dropped it over Christmas Valley, and then you can see that overnight it continued to grow right there. I'll show you what it looked like when we ended our stream yesterday, and then what it was able to do throughout the overnight hours, and that's a similar picture to what the WRF-S fire model was showing as well. So what the WRF-S fire model was basically showing, one second, just want to double check one thing. Alrighty, so we are back. Sorry for the quick pause right there. So basically what the WRF-S fire model was showing was that this northeastern finger was just going to continue to grow farther and farther towards the northeast here. And that was actually something that went along with what CAL FIRE was saying in their update, was that as of right now, there's so much critical fuel in this area. The fire has so much energy right now, and the winds are just perfectly aligned that I'm gonna close down my other screen. Hopefully the live chat's all good, but I haven't been looking at it very much recently. But so basically what the model was showing is that this was going to continue to push to the northeast, and what that reminded me of was in the Cal Fire update, they said that because of how critical the conditions are right here, with the very low relative humidity, with all the fuels in this area, with the southwesterly winds pushing at about 35 miles per hour, that they weren't even going to try to put in any containment lines or try to go direct on this fire and stop it in its path. Basically what they were saying is that their priority was to just basically try to herd this section of the fire. I'd never really heard that term before. Again, no pun intended by saying heard that term before. But it sounds like their plan on this northeastern section is to, so zooming in here, is to basically do what they were able to do last night. You can see that they obviously weren't able to just stop it in its tracks, and not really a big surprise there based on how low the relative humidity was last night, how strong the winds were, but you can see that they were able to herd it around where we have a large amount of structures. So we have the streets right here, and you can see that fire perimeter looked like it was going directly into those streets, and then they just kept it right out of that area. So that sounded like it was the plan moving forward. Again, it doesn't look like we have many streets going up here. We can take a look at the other map to see what kind of structures we have in that area. So that's interesting. It looks like there's not very many structures directly to the northeast right there, but we do have some. Let's try to measure how far. Again, this hotspot imagery isn't recent, so this is going to be a pretty rough number. I imagine in the last few hours, and since whenever this hotspot imagery was obtained, the fire has continued to grow towards the northeast. But again, I'm only as good as the most recent information we have. So right here, it looks like there's a bit of a clump of structures. That looks like that's about 3 miles away. It looks like their herding so far has been successful, but that right there to those structures is about 1 mile away. And then up to these structures up here looks to be about 4 miles away. But again, that isn't recent data. I imagine that fire has moved farther towards the northeast since whenever that hotspot data came in. So just looking in there, I believe that's some of those structures that we were seeing up on that side of the hill. And then it is also just interesting to be able to zoom into the topography to figure out exactly what's going on right here. So as it moves along, you can imagine that what I'm hoping is that they're just going to be able to continue to herd it, keep it out of where we see these streets, but it most likely will continue to move uphill right here. As I was saying earlier, fires love to move uphill because you can imagine if you have some flames right there, those flames are tilting over a lot of these fuels, and then they're preheating them so that by the time the flame touches it, it's interesting that the flames look like they're moving. I think that's just almost a glitch, but it looks like it's fire activity. But as the flames are tilting over, it preheats some of the fuel so that by the time the flames actually touch it, it just bursts into flames, and then that just keeps happening over and over again. So we likely will see that fire continue to move up that hill right there. But you notice that this whole area of Christmas Valley, again, this is Lake Tahoe right here. So now we're looking almost directly south at this point. Where we have a lot of these structures, it's relatively flat in here, where we're likely to see that the growth throughout the next couple of hours is up this topography, and then also farther up here where I'm gonna turn it back around real quick just because I'm about to use directions, and it'd be a lot easier if we're oriented towards north. Again, still trying to learn how to drive this. So what I was saying is I'm glad that we were able to look at this in Google Earth, because if you just look at it from this angle, you might not know that there's a huge hill right here. So again, expecting it to push up this direction with that topography. And then also the other factor going on, again, there's the fire behavior triangle is fuel, weather, and topography. Fuel is certainly not an issue in any direction. It looks like there's fuel no matter where you go. Looks like some dense trees in this area, and that was something that we saw on the videos as well. I also showed in that tree mortality viewer that unfortunately a lot of these trees have been killed due to bark beetles as well. So fuel wise, fire looks like it could basically move in any direction. Other side of the fire behavior triangle of fuel, weather, topography is topography. When we zoomed in here, it looks like it's going uphill on this, up on this side of the fire. So that's where it would try to move up this direction. And then when you think about the weather side of the fire behavior triangle, key things that we have there is low relative humidity. That's going to be true for everywhere, so that's not really going to affect which direction it spreads in. But the key thing that we have, I think the number one factor that we have overall on the fire right now are those southwesterly winds. So that's going to try to continue to push this fire farther up towards the northeast. And then what I'm really hoping doesn't happen is that those southwesterly winds pick up burning embers here and create a bunch of spot fires in Christmas Valley. But that's something that we're just going to have to try to stay updated on. I can go back to Twitter, see if anybody has posted any recent links. Yeah, so that is a great comment. Great live stream for the Wharf S Fire model. I was thinking you could screen capture the model run before the stream and then just show the video. Unbelievable comment right there. That is genius. I don't know why I haven't thought of that in the past, because apologies if you were watching this earlier and we had about a 5-minute buffer. It's because I tried to load one of the most complex wildfire models in the world and it almost crashed my entire stream. But seems like we're back on right now. I should maybe just double check the live chat to make sure we're not having any more problems, but I think we are good. Again, apologies if anybody's posting questions in the live chat. I'm trying to reduce the buffering, so I just have one screen going at this point, but I will continue to check in on that live chat just to make sure we don't get another big buffering situation. But as long as I'm not loading that wildfire simulation model, we should be okay. So all the latest footage of Caldor and Dixie on Twitter and TikTok under this thread. Sources below each one. Hope it helps you. So that would be extremely helpful. Oh, that is an instant follow right there. Thank you very much. All right, so let's check out and see what we have on this thread. This will be some of the most important information where we can, what we were doing in yesterday's video is a lot of these images were coming with some addresses on them, and then we were pulling them into the fire perimeter map to be able to actually figure out where the spot fires were happening. Now, so we will take a look at that. I just want to also see if we have any other ones coming in here. That was the evacuation warning. So let's just check this one out to see what this fire is looking like on the ground as of right now. So it looks like those are all August 30th. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here. So it looks like the most recent ones were from August 30th. So I will continue to follow that in the future though. But in the meantime, let's check out Fire Scanner, because again, I personally don't, I have a fire scanner, but I don't like having it on in the videos just because it seems like it almost becomes more of a distraction, and half the time it's basically just white noise. So if you think the same, and if you sometimes get headaches as well from that fire scanner, what you can do is just go to Twitter, follow CA Fire Scanner, and he basically takes the most important things that you might hear from that fire scanner over an hour-long time period, and then just presents them in a very condensed format. So Caldor Fire above Kirkwood Resort, fire still above Ridge on the other side. So let's zoom in on this photo to really see it. So it looks, you can imagine perhaps the person was in Kirkwood looking this direction over that ridge line. Fire still on the other side. So let's go over to Google Earth and see if we can try to figure out, exactly what that might look like. So you can imagine the person is right over here in Kirkwood, at least where the label was for Kirkwood. And then they're looking up, I believe, at this ridge line right here. So just zooming out again, you can see Kirkwood right there now. There's the fire as of right now. And based on that photo, it seems like the fire is on the other side of this ridge. But according to that photo, it hasn't crossed that ridge yet. So that's something that we're certainly going to be focused on throughout the rest of this video. You can see the situation that we have right here. It looks like there's a large amount of structures in here. The fire is just on the other side of that ridge. And then we're just going to have to follow it to... Now, one thing that I will say, and this is why I love that we're able to actually use Google Earth now, is this fire will most likely be able to make a run up this ridge line right here. The reason for that, it's what I was saying earlier, is that fires like to move uphill because they're able to preheat those fuels. So that fire most likely will make a run up this ridge line. But the good news is that all our structures are on the other side of this ridgeline, and the exact opposite thing will work as it tries to go down the other side of this ridge right here. So like I said, fires like to move uphill. It'll have a much harder time moving downhill because basically fires just move slower downhill because instead of preheating the fuels, all the heat is going back to where they've already burned. And one other thing that I will notice, again, I can't actually confirm this, but it looks like we're going to transition to some very rocky terrain at the top of that ridge line. So honestly, thinking about that situation right now, again, we'll get oriented real quick right here because I'm about to say directions again. Make sure north is north. So looking in that Kirkwood area right there, that shows where that finger is starting to make a push towards that ridge line right there. But again, it looks like there's a lot of rocky terrain right there that will hopefully slow the fire down some. If not, as it has to go downhill, that will hopefully slow the fire down as well. Because of that rocky ridge and the fact that it has to move downhill right there, I think what I'm more worried about at this point is the possibility of spot fires being picked up and just thrown over the ridge line. Something that we know has been a problem on every single fire that we've been covering this year. Those spot fires have basically every time we think there's some good news where there's a successful firing operation or a good containment line, it seems like it's always the winds picking up those burning embers, dropping them over the containment line, dropping them over the fire line. In this case, it would be dropping it over the ridge line. That seems to be happening a lot this season, and that's why personally I think winds, which creates spot fires, which is also combined with how dry the fuels are, because if burning embers just dropped into some wet grass, it wouldn't turn into a fire, but when it's dropped into some critically dry fuels, the lowest we've ever recorded, there's about a 90 to 95% ignition rate. So that's the combination of why those spot fires have been so challenging this year. It's because the fuels are critically dry, so it's primed for those burning embers. And then we've also just had a lot of those embers being produced in the first place by a lot of that activity that has been happening. So also on here, it looks like we might have some new infrared data. So not much fire spread into communities in South Lake Tahoe and Myers at this time. Fire made a 5-mile run east to top of Trimmer Peak. Fire close to Kirkwood. So that's also another great account to follow. I would say one of the best accounts. Zeke Lender. He's the real deal right there. So what was the peak he said right there? Trimmer Peak. That might have been the one we were just looking at. Trimmer Peak. So yeah, that is the one that we were looking at about maybe 10 or 20 minutes ago. What we were saying was that based on where that fire was, we were looking at the topography in this area. Again, you can see that it's uphill from where that fire is to Trimmer Peak. And what we were saying earlier is that the fire likes to burn uphill, so it's most likely going to be able to make a run up the steep terrain, and it sounds like that's exactly what it was able to do in that area where he said it has reached up to Trimmer Peak right there. But in that report, he also said that, just want to go back to make sure I'm not wording it wrong, not much fire spread into communities into South Lake Tahoe and Myers at this time. So that is, I want to see when the timestamp was on that, because I don't want to be presenting wrong information. That was 14 minutes ago. So that is some, although the map was from 4:45. So again, that's where I do always have to remind you that when I am showing these maps, these aren't it's not live data that we're looking at. So just from this map to when he was showing his maps, it's now moved up to Trimmer Peak right there, about a 5-mile run. But it is great to hear that one of our main concerns was that with those southwesterly winds, it would take some of this fire that we have around Christmas Valley and push it into Myers and the South Lake Tahoe area. As of right now, it sounds like their herding plan, where they said they're basically just going to try to herd this fire around a lot of these communities where you see these streets in here. As of right now, it sounds like it's working according to plan. So that is some great news there. With that being said, I want to see if I can get that new data, because it would be very helpful to be able to plot the new map. I think that's the one I already have. Back to parent directory. See if there's a new one here. No, I think I have all those as well. Never looked in here before. Or that one. Interesting. So I don't actually know what this is going to show, but we're going to try it out. That's going to download right there, and we'll bring it into Google Earth because it looks like that might be some more recent data than what we're currently looking at. So view, exit full screen. Hopefully this shows where some of that recent growth has been on the fire, because again, this map is still from this morning. So what we're trying to see right now is if we can get some of that new information in here. One sec. Want to make sure that I put this in the right folder. Alrighty. Now we'll go back to full screen. And let's try to see what changed here. All right. So that was the new data. And I'm very glad that we were able to bring that in. So now that I know that that is good data, I'm going to bring in the other ones too. Again, sorry for the brief delay. Hopefully in the meantime, people can take this time to try to maybe answer other questions people have been posting in the live chat, because again, I haven't been looking at the live chat this whole time, so sorry if anybody's been posting any questions, but I am trying to, we had a bit of a buffer problem a while ago, so I'm trying to just keep it on one screen here so we don't run into a big buffer problem again. And right now what we're doing is we're pulling in the most recent heat data to be able to figure out exactly where this fire is as of right now. Bring that in too. Alrighty. We are good to go. So let's just turn these on one at a time, just to get the overall view of what we're looking at with the new data. So that one looks like it's an overall perimeter with the new heat in there. That one looks like it is showing maybe the old one. And then this third one looks like it's even older. So I'm just going to turn the old fire perimeter on. No, not the divisions. And then, so this is going to be very interesting to look at. This is what we had been looking at so far, where on this northeastern section of the fire, big story that we were talking about yesterday was when it came down Echo Summit. Some of those spot fires were able to drop into Christmas Valley. You can see also some spot fires were actually able to jump over the valley. And then with the very low relative humidity and the southwesterly winds, it made a big push towards the northeast there. But the key thing that I keep showing is that where we have a lot of those streets, the fire perimeter stops right before those streets. You can always see it the best right on this side right here, where you have those streets, all the houses, and the firefighters did an amazing job of stopping this fire and keeping it out of these communities, which honestly, I have no idea how they did that. Considering the conditions that we had, the relative humidity in the single digits, wind gusts moving in the exact wrong direction, and then also the fact that with some of those videos we were seeing last night with the extreme fire behavior going on, we saw the torching. I believe I saw some reports about crowning as well. It is amazing that they were able to herd this fire around these structures, because when we ended our live stream last night, we didn't have any confirmation of what was going on the ground, and based on this map, it seems like they successfully kept it out of the community so far. And as of 4:45, which I believe is I believe I'm pulling in the same data that he has here. Not exactly positive about that though. Seems like it's maybe from 4:45 right there. But he does also say fire close to Kirkwood, so we will have to jump down in that area in 1 second. But first, let's now turn on that new layer to see where the fire has moved throughout the last few hours. So it's right there. Again, it might be a little bit difficult to see, so I'll click it on and off so you can see exactly where it is. And it paints the same picture that he was talking about, and actually the exact same picture that we were talking about earlier in this video, where we were looking at this topography right here, and you can see that it's very steep going up this hill. So we were predicting that that fire was going to be able to push up this hill, and it looks like with the most recent data, that's exactly what ended up happening. Looks like the fire perimeter has reached up to Trimmer Peak, but the number one thing that I notice is that while it did push down in this area as well, once again, it looks like they have successfully stopped it right before those streets right there. So that is some great news there. Let's check this other side. Looks like that darker red color right there stops before the streets as well. Might have come down in this area as well. Again, sorry that it's a little difficult to see. It's that light red color that is the new growth. Again, just in case you're new to the live chat, I can turn it off and on real quick so you can see it. Right in that area, that is where the new growth has been over the last few hours. Once again, looks like it comes up to the street and then stops. So not seeing any. Came down on this side as well. Not a big surprise there. Again, it's most likely moving slower right there because now it's having to move downhill. But not seeing anywhere on this map where it has full on gone through a community yet. So big thank you to Zeke Lunder, not only for reminding me to check and see if there's new data, but also for posting the great concise update right there to tell us exactly what to look at. Again, if you don't already follow him on Twitter, that is one of the best accounts to follow. Also on YouTube as well, he posts some good concise videos, and he actually even has a website as well where you can see more concise updates on the wildfires as well. But big update there is that it has grown what appears to be 5 miles up to Trimmer Peak right there. But now let's combine that with this other information that we have. So again, that is not accurate. Don't look at those hotspots. It makes it look like it went all the way through Christmas Valley, and we know that that is not the case. Actually, this could be a good little learning tool right here. So looking at this map, actually we'll look at the other one first because unfortunately this is the only resources that I used to be able to have, but it is a bit deceiving, especially if you use the GOES heat. And looking at detections. So based on the heat detections, it looks like this fire has completely moved into where we see all those structures, again represented by the orange dots right there. It looks like the fire has basically just overtaken South Lake Tahoe. It looks like it's absolutely a catastrophic situation going on. And that is the reason you probably notice I've barely been using this map at all throughout this video. Yesterday it looked like all of Christmas Valley was covered in these hotspots. But if we look at where that most recent fire perimeter data actually is, you can see that as of right now, according to the most recent information that I've been able to collect as of this point, it looks like there isn't any fire that has moved into the communities of Christmas Valley. There are some areas where we have seen some recent growth where it's extended closer to some of those streets, but we're not seeing it rip through the communities like that other map would make it seem like. So again, big thank you to Neil LaRoe. That's actually another great account to follow, is Neil LaRoe. I'm actually interested to see what he has to say about the fire today. He showed me how to access that data. Again, I have to double check to make sure before I share that link. Oh, and alright, so somebody was talking about how I should just video screen capture the Warfest fire model, but looks like the SJSU Fire Weather Research Lab already did it for me, so we'll actually be able to look at it without my entire stream going offline because I'm trying to load one of the most complex wildfire simulation models in the world. Right here you can see what it was predicting. I want to make sure we know what model run this is. So let's read it. This was 3 hours ago. So this is the model run that I tried to load and then it almost crashed the live stream and we had about 5 minutes of buffering. So this is what I got to see earlier, but you most likely did not. So just pressing play here. No way, that's going to be very funny if even the video of it causes a buffer. Alright. I'm going to reload this page, see if we can get better luck. And it's playing. So you can see that the Wharf S-Fire model was predicting a large amount of growth towards the northeast right there. And you notice how it's in alignment with those winds, where we have those southwesterly winds right there. It acts to push the fire forward. Now, one thing to really point out, you can see it's an experimental forecast only. Main reason for that is because it doesn't take into account fire suppression tactics, and it also doesn't take into account spotting. So, but overall, as we've seen throughout the Caldor Fire especially, it seems to be doing a very good job at simulating where that growth is going to be right there. But the key thing to think about where I say it doesn't simulate fire suppression tactics is tying it into this map right here. You can see how critical fire suppression tactics do end up being, where the fire perimeter, it's not a coincidence that it stops directly where all of the streets are. That is all thanks to our amazing wildland firefighters out there. And again, I can't even believe that they were able to stop this thing last night. Or not stop it, but herd it around these communities and not have a situation like we saw in the Greenville area earlier, where it just swept through the entire community. Amazing work done on this fire. But based on the Wharf S-Fire model, it looks like once again it was pretty spot on, predicting a lot of that growth up towards the northeast right there, where it aligns with the topography. And then I believe it was also predicting some growth into this area as well. So we'll have to see if that starts to happen as those southwest winds pick up. Now, one thing we haven't looked at on this yet, and then I forget if I mentioned it, but also that is a great account to follow on Twitter, Neil LaRoe. He's one of the top wildfire researchers in the world. I was lucky enough one day to be able to get to actually watch an entire prescribed burn in Utah with him, and it was unbelievable getting to hear him break down all the different plume dynamics that were going on and everything that was happening. So you can see he posts a lot of great information about basically any wildfire that's going on. One of the top experts in the field that you can follow there. But I do also want to see what's going on in this Kirkwood area. So let's see if the most recent heat maps. So those looks like they're still old. That one is the new one. So not sure why it comes in as a green color down here when it was coming in as light red in the other places. But it looks like we now have the update that we've been looking for on Kirkwood. So just zooming out, I know I need to get better about not always just being so zoomed in, because it is important to get our bearings every once in a while. Sorry about that. I had to take a quick sip of water. Don't want to lose my voice. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. We might have another 2.5 hours to follow this fire. But zooming in here, again, I want to be able to click it on and off so you can see where the new growth has been on this northeastern finger. So again, the big two spots that we're following on the Caldor Fire, it's that Christmas Valley area where you can see there is fire on both sides of Christmas Valley, but as of right now, they have been able to keep it out of those structures. We've seen a lot of growth all the way up towards Trimmer Peak at this point, and most likely going to see more growth up towards the northeast as that section is fueled by the southwesterly winds. As of the most recent report, sounds like the fire has not moved into these communities of South Lake Tahoe and Myers yet, so that is some great news there. But the one other place where we're keeping a very close eye on is this eastern finger right here, extending closer towards Kirkwood. So you can see where the previous fire perimeter was. I downloaded this fire perimeter this morning, and then we look at the one that just came in at 4:45 p.m., and that's where it's extended to as of right now. So let's try to zoom in here and actually diagnose what's going on in Kirkwood. So one piece of good news, it looks like we have Kirkwood Lake right here, which I believe most of our structures that we're worried about are right here where you see all those streets. Actually, I want to make sure this one, I do, again, while the hot spots on this map are very deceiving, the reason I do still show it is because it's very useful when it comes to where communities are. So interesting that it's showing a hotspot. I want to make sure that going a bit slow right now. Alright, that's not exactly working for us. So I'm going to just come back over here. So what I was saying though is that you notice one of those, it looks like some spot fires were able to start where the fire perimeter, so it looks like the fire perimeter itself, again here's Kirkwood right here. That's where the old fire perimeter was, the one that jumped over Highway 88. That green line is the updated fire perimeter as of 4:45. I believe that's what we're looking at. Or at least, let's see exactly how they labeled that. I want to make sure. I believe it's actually, still have the labeling right in here. So it shows heat progression. So it's not an official fire perimeter yet. It's the extension that the heat has progressed to. So right there you can see that it looks like the heat has progressed over this ridge line right here. And then it looks like two spot fires started where you see Kirkwood Lake right here. You can imagine some burning embers were picked up by those southwesterly winds, dropped into these critically dry fuels, started this spot fire. Then maybe it did a little leapfrog action where a burning ember from that one dropped down right here, started that spot fire, or perhaps it was all just spot fires coming off of the main blaze itself. Looking at this, so again, we were hoping that the fire was going to significantly slow down as it came down this hill, but it looks like it didn't have any problem on that area. So again, we're going to have to keep a very close eye because we know that this fire is going to try to continue to extend up this part of the ridgeline. Does look like we have a large amount of fuels in there, and that is steep topography, so it is going to be able to move up that ridge as well. And then we'll have to watch and see if it makes a drop down this, because you can see this is where we have a large amount of streets in there, lots of houses as well. Right on this side, the one thing that I see working in our favor, Kirkwood Lake would act as a little bit of a barrier from that spot fire at least, but now I am worried that does look like there's fairly continuous fuels from where that heat progression seems to have extended to and where we have some of those streets. But again, Cal Fire has been doing an amazing job of being able to herd this fire away from a lot of those structures, so hopefully they're able to do that once again in this area. So let's see if this one finally loaded. So yeah, again, it shows that hotspot directly over Kirkwood, and again, that's why I try not to show this map anymore, because it's based on satellite data, and we've seen time and time again that it is not, it's much more better to go off of this kind of data that is much higher resolution. So that's why I haven't been showing that other that other map all that much, but I do sometimes show it just to figure out exactly where the structures are that we're looking at. It does look like there's some, so I imagine that is the lake. Gonna try to match those up. So Kirkwood Lake right here. See if we can see some structures along the shoreline. So it looks like, yeah, a couple structures in there, structures right there. So that's actually a bit more concerning than I'd originally thought, because I didn't realize that, of course, there are structures around a lake, but so you see those right there. That's where that spot fire, or at least the heat progression, is showing that it's extended to as of right now. If we zoom in here, it does look like we have maybe 2, 4, not the best time for those structures to disappear on me. But actually you can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 20 structures around Kirkwood Lake, and it looks like that's where those spot fires have developed, where that north or the eastern finger of the fire has been pushing closer towards Kirkwood right there. So that would cause some concern right now, as it looks like that spot fire has fully developed. But with that being said, in this area, it looks like it has a pretty steep downhill run in this area as it descends into the lake. So if it's moving downhill into the lake, that would slow the fire progression down at least a little bit, and hopefully allow firefighters to get that structure protection around those structures that we do see around that lake. But then as we move forward as well, one key thing that we're going to continue to follow throughout the course of this live stream is to make sure that those don't push in to where we see even more structures just to the southeast of there in Kirkwood itself. Right there you can see much larger amount of structures than what we're just seeing around that lake. If we were to match that structure map up with this map, it would look something like that. You can see it's that row of streets right there where a lot of those structures are. So we're going to keep an eye on those hotspots as we move forward. Looks like that is an area of the fire where we've seen a fair bit of growth. So we're definitely going to keep a very close eye on Kirkwood. You can see what it has grown since that fire perimeter this morning. That's showing the new heat progression. So I'm going to go back to Twitter just to see if anybody has posted any new links to check out. Again, apologies if anybody's been posting questions in the live chat. I don't have that screen going because I want to reduce buffering and maximize the Wi-Fi that we're using on this screen. But despite dangerous gusty winds, firefighters have stopped the march of the Caldor Fire from impacting the Kirkwood ski resort and its cabins as of this posting. Firefighters from across SoCal have arrived at the resort. So thank you, Trish, for sending that in. I love this new format that we have for these videos because, again, if I'm going into a map, especially when I'm still learning how to drive Google Earth here, I'm not able to also scroll through Twitter and find the most recent information. So it's incredibly helpful when you guys send in links and information like that, videos as well. That's what we were looking at yesterday. And just to match that up, it's a perfect conclusion to what we were just talking about in that area with that heat progression there. Despite dangerous gusty winds, I'm just going to read the whole thing again because it's so great to hear. Firefighters have stopped the march of the Caldor Fire from impacting the Kirkwood ski resort and its cabins as of this posting. Firefighters from across SoCal have arrived at the resort. So that is just some great news there. Nice. Let's also check out the fire scanner. This one's from 14 minutes ago. So I'm going to take a sip of water before I read it. So a dozer caught fire in Division D while in green fuels outside of the fire perimeter. 2 copters were requested for water drops, but since they have been canceled, fire has been knocked down with no reports of injuries near Butte Creek. So let's check out where that happened. So it said Division D. You can pull that up right here. See if you guys find it before me. It looks like it's on that northwestern side right there, where that is an area where they were able to pick up some new containment lines, but does sound like there is clearly still some fire going on in that area. I wonder if we can see the hot spots in that area. Again, I'm not trying to use this map as much anymore because we've seen time and time again that those hotspots aren't accurate. Case in point, we just saw a tweet that the fire is not in Kirkwood, and this map makes it look like all of Kirkwood is burning down right now. And that is not the case. So, or at least since my most recent information, that should be the number one thing I preface there, because that should actually probably be something I say often is I'm only as good as the information that I have at hand. Most of the time I'm able to find pretty recent information, but if a tweet's from an hour ago, especially this season, we've seen a lot be able to change within the course of an hour. So always stay updated with the local resources, with CAL FIRE and with InsuWeb. And just looking in this area, it does look like there's still some heat on that section there in Division D. So it makes so interesting to hear that a dozer was able to catch fire in there, but good to hear that there were no injuries. So Caldor Fire, the fire started under the cabin, has been extinguished by ground resources with no spread to the vegetation and no injuries. Extensive damage to the dozer itself. And then that was the one that we matched up earlier where we originally started to get worried about the Kirkwood area. But now, with that being said, we did have the one report say that firefighters have stopped the march of the Caldor Fire from impacting the Kirkwood ski resort. With that being said, that is an hour ago. And we have continued to see activity on the Caldor Fire. Just taking another look at satellite imagery, you can see how much smoke is coming off of it right now. And especially on that eastern and northeastern section. Actually looks like the northern section is flaring up a bit more than it has in previous days. So clearly still a lot of activity going on in the fire. So there's still a lot to keep our eye on. One thing that I will say is that just looking at the Caldor Fire update here, I couldn't possibly go over them all, but there's a massive amount of evacuation orders and warnings in place for the Caldor Fire, including all of South Lake Tahoe. So that's where I purposely don't try to go over that kind of information, because that opens up some unnecessary room for confusion. It's much better for you to get evacuation information straight from the source so that there's no possible area of confusion. But you can also see that the Dixie fire seems to have a lot of activity going on as of right now. So again, I don't have the fire perimeters on the Dixie, so unfortunately we're going to have to go back to this map where, again, we've seen on the Caldor Fire throughout this update how faulty these hotspots are on this map, but it does give us a general idea of what's going on. And it does look like there's a large amount of heat in that Dixie fire area, especially on that southeastern section and the northwestern section as well. But as of right now, again, usually this map overestimates where the heat is. But as of right now, it looks like most of those communities that we see around the southeastern part of the Dixie fire are still away from those hotspots. Wonder how far. Looks like that's about 4 miles away right there. But again, with that being said, that information we've already seen throughout this video that it's not perfect. So if you're in any of these areas, I'm pretty sure there are new evacuation orders in place. So definitely be sure to stay updated on all your most recent information there. And I just realized that it's now after 7 o'clock. So we can check and see what our updated acreage burn numbers are and containment numbers as well. Usually they do these right about 7 o'clock. So looks like Caldor Fire most likely hitting 200,000 acres in the next couple of hours. It's up to 199 with 18% containment. So amazing that we're actually able to pick up any containment on this, given how much activity and the critical conditions that we've had with that red flag warning and those gusty southwesterly winds. That's the big thing we've been talking about: heavy timber, steep terrain, lots and lots of evacuation orders and warnings. So you can go to InciWeb as well to get that kind of information. And then that right there basically sums up the weather forecast. We're not in the clear by any means. That red flag warning has been extended until 11 p.m. on Wednesday. So let's take a look at the forecast again, because it's been a while since we looked at the forecast, and it does match up perfectly where we've seen the most recent fire progression. Actually, yeah, we'll go in here and check out the forecast. So these are the winds that we have as of right now over this area. Let's choose Myers as our point. So it looks like there's still some 30-mile-per-hour winds right now. Hopefully they calm down overnight, but something that we saw last night is that you notice it stays relatively windy, and those winds coming from a southerly direction during the overnight hours. So this is something that we were concerned about last night, is that you think about this area right here. It's a valley. So during those overnight hours, the winds that you have are able to just be funneled through this valley right here, and then that would try to take some fire and push it farther to the north. And that was the big concern last night, that those southerly winds would push some of this fire activity straight into these areas, and I believe that is still the concern moving forward. But a lot of the information that we've been seeing so far has been positive. Again, I just downloaded the newest heat progression maps. I'll switch them on and off so you can see what color we're looking at for the newest heat progression maps. So the old one is that bright red color. The new one is that dark red color that you see flashing on and off right there. So looking at the newest heat progression maps, we have continued to see growth on this fire. That's for sure. It looks like it's burned out this unburnt island right here. That now looks like it's in that bright red color. So it looks like that's burnt out, which is a concern because we do see large amount of roads and structures in that area, but I can't actually confirm that the fire went in there, and we have seen the amazing structure protection they've done. So hopefully, even if the fire did come through this area, they're able to create some structure protection around those. But where we've seen the good news is that right around Christmas Valley, where we've had the largest concern, the fire, as of this map, again, this was from 4:45, so a lot can change in the last few hours. But as of this map, it hasn't moved into any of these communities, into where you see the streets. That's where you have a lot of the structures. And then Myers, I think that was my number one concern for today, because that was in direct alignment with where we have the fire and where those winds were going to try to push the fire. And you can see that the winds did push the fire, but seems like our wildland firefighters are stronger than the wind at this point and the fire, because they were able to stop it in its tracks before it got developed into any communities. So great news there. The area where we saw the most growth over the day today, and a very large amount of growth, was on this whole northeastern section. It went from right here all the way up to Trimmer Peak. So it's something we can actually do that we didn't do earlier. So I'm going to turn on the heat perimeter because it should still be the old information. Let's try Trimmer Peak. I think it actually might be the new information there, but where the information is incorrect is it shows all those hot spots in Christmas Valley, and we know that that's not the case. Or we don't know it's the case, but based on all of the other updates we've seen, there's no reason to believe that or that hotspot over Kirkland. So do want to mention that if you use this map, to use it with a very large grain of salt, because right there looks like the fire has just ripped through all of Christmas Valley. But if you look on the actual fire perimeter map, which is much higher resolution, not sure why that keeps popping up, but it's on both sides of Christmas Valley, but as of right now, doesn't appear like it's actually moved into it. So again, use that other map with a grain of salt. So I see somebody might have sent a new post here. The heat signatures you see on CalTopo are a depiction of a reading gathered by a satellite. The size of the red circle is a sphere where the reading is located, not the size of the reading. The smaller the circle, the more accurate the location. So that's very interesting information right there. So I think a great reference for how to look at those CalTopo maps is Zeke Lunder had a great post about it earlier today. And it's something that I've thought for a while as well, because it makes it look like the fire will sometimes be in communities where it's not. And he had a great post basically summing up why you can't exactly trust those. So I know that the Fire Weather Research Lab liked it. So right there. So many mapping websites use satellite heat detections to show dots for fire location. These are inaccurate, not intended for tactical use. Aerial mapping flights, much more accurate, do not show fire in town at 5:20 a.m. Please don't spread bad info. So I think that basically sums up what I've been saying throughout this live stream as well. You look at the big difference there where it looks like it's completely through Christmas Valley if you look at that map. But if you look at the high resolution flight info, Christmas Valley, as of the most recent information, looks like we're still good there. Wildland firefighters have been doing an incredible job on that one, which reminds me to update this, see if new information's come in. Again, we did see that has been updated to 199,000 acres on InstaWeb. But the main reason I wanted to look at this was to see what kind of personnel we have. Looks like we have about 4,000 personnel on the Caldor Fire right now. So pretty awesome to see that right there, and amazing to see what kind of work they've been able to do. Again, this was, as I was saying, I've been doing these wildfire updates for 2 years now. I followed all of the 2020 wildfires. I've been basically taking everything that I've learned throughout my graduate program at San Jose State, earning my master's in meteorology under the Fire Weather Research Laboratory, and I've been basically trying to just apply them to these videos to try to predict and forecast how the fire might be moving in the future. And what I was saying was that in the 2 years that I've been doing these update and forecast videos, this is, I would say it is still the most critical situation I've seen, just based on where that fire is, based on that red flag warning that we had yesterday, we have today, and once again have tomorrow. So I'd say it's unbelievable to see the work that those 4,000 personnel have been able to do so far, given how critical the conditions have been. We saw reports of relative humidity in the single... Actually, you know what? Instead of me just guessing what the weather has been, let's check it out. So this is another great website, ggweather.com. Then come on down to meteorologist links. This is something I use at KSBW to figure out what observations have been happening. You go to Mesonet. And it basically has all the different weather stations that you'd want to look at throughout California. So in this case, we're interested in what the winds are actually doing in the Lake Tahoe area. Hopefully there's a site in Myers, because that's probably the area that one of the areas we're most interested in. Looks like there's Lower Echo Lake. This one has wind data, so we'll take this one. And then you go 3-day. And again, this is going to be actual observations of the actual weather that's in this. It's when I show this one, that's just showing forecast data, which it's useful to look at because it's more animated, it's more visual. You can actually see those strong winds coming from the southwest that try to push the fire towards the northeast. But this is the real deal, not model data. So it looks like it ended up being warmer in this area than the model was forecasting. That's pretty interesting and actually surprising considering how much smoke we had over the fire. I would have thought sunlight would have had a hard time getting through that smoke. This is something we've seen on a number of fires this year where when you have that much smoke, it'll end up being maybe 15 degrees cooler than the forecast was saying, but looks like it was actually warmer than expected today, getting up to 81 degrees. Relative humidity is the one I'm the most interested in though, down into the single digits. So we heard that report, we heard somebody say that, but it looks like that actually is the case. And even as late as 5:51 p.m., we're still in single digit relative humidity. So I know I've been saying a lot of good news throughout this video because basically all the updates that we've been getting so far have been on the good news side of things, especially compared with yesterday's forecast. But I do still have to remind you that we still have critically low relative humidity. Even as we get into the nighttime hours, that's drier than you'll often see during the peak of the afternoon. So the fire will be able to continue to burn overnight, and we do still have some gusts. This is just showing around 15 to 17 mile or 15 to 18 mile per hour wind gusts in this area. So looks like the wind, at least for this spot, ended up being a bit calmer than the forecast was predicting throughout the day today. I would imagine it's probably more on some of the ridges. So actually this would be a great one. You can see that would be the exact kind of winds that we're worried about because you have Kirkwood there. You can imagine the fires right here. So if you have winds right there that are strong blowing from the southwest, that's going to have the same kind of behavior of trying to take that active hotspot and push it closer towards Kirkwood. You imagine those southwest winds pushing that fire perimeter right there closer towards Kirkwood. So I'm interested to see what these winds got up to throughout the day today. Temperature much cooler in this area. So high today was maybe around 65 in this spot, but you can see extremely gusty winds in this area. So again, this is just southwest of Kirkwood. So again, this might be a bit exaggerated because it's up on a ridge line here, but you can't imagine there's some windy conditions around the rest of this area that might start to explain how we were able to get those spot fires that we were looking at in the Kirkwood area. So this is something that we're watching at right on this ridge line right here. I wonder if we could even see the weather station. It might be, weather station might be like right on that structure right there. But looking at Kirkwood, you can imagine those winds that we're looking at from that weather station right there, gusting, how high were those saying? It was reporting wind gusts today up to 42 miles per hour. So that, wow. That one right there at 1:30 p.m., this weather station reported a 51 mile per hour wind gust. So that much outperformed the models, which were saying just up to 35 miles per hour. So that starts to paint the picture of why we were able to get these spot fires in the Kirkwood area. You can imagine if it's 35 or 50 mile per hour wind gusts up there, it's most likely some 35 mile per hour wind gusts as you're not on the ridge line anymore. So that's where it was able to take some burning embers from this fire perimeter, drop them down by Kirkwood Lake, and looks like we got some spot fires in that area. But the most updated, or the most recent update that we could find made it sound like the Kirkwood situation was looking pretty good as of this point. But unbelievable to hear that it is looking good, considering those conditions throughout the day today. Relative humidity in the teens and gusts up to 51 miles per hour. I might have to check that station with some other stations to make sure that's actually accurate, but that is a station on the ground, so I believe that it is. Now, again, this just kind of reminded me, I know I've been saying a lot of good news throughout this video, but all of South Lake Tahoe is still currently under an evacuation order. We still have, and actually this map is incomplete. We have evacuation orders extending into Nevada now. So again, never go to me for evacuation information. Go to the local resources, go to Cal Fire, InsuWeb. That's where you should get evacuation information. Definitely not for me. But so what I'm saying is that on this fire, we do still have a fair bit of activity. We can see how much it grew throughout the day today. Grew about 5 miles up to Trimmer Peak right there. So we've definitely seen a large amount of activity, but key things that I'm happy to hear about is that in this Kirkwood area, at least according to the most recent update that we could find, sounds like firefighters have done an amazing job keeping the fire out of the Kirkwood area. And then as of the most recent heat progression, it sounds like we have kept it out of Christmas Valley as well. But with that being said, again, we looked at how critical those conditions are. We still have those wind gusts. We still have that very low relative humidity. So we are going to continue to have to be updated on this fire over the next couple of days, because you can see that red flag warning doesn't stop until 11 p.m. Wednesday. So what I'm going to do here is just check and see if anybody sent any new information. Also check the fire scanner, see if there's been any big updates recently. This is 5 minutes ago. Fixed wing retardant operations have concluded for the day. We're working by good retardant line in there. Won't hold the fire, but will buy them some time to widen the road leading to the lake per radio traffic. So let's check that out. Whoops. Wrights Lake. Interesting. So that kind of paints the picture of what the Wharf S-Fire model was showing. They're showing that they were expected to see some growth up on this side of the fire. So it looks like they have been using some aerial operations up there, but it sounds like they're grounded for the rest of the day. Again, not expecting that to stop the fire, but should slow things down a little bit. And there's potentially cabins involved in the same area. Air support will still be requested for this, but unable due to the time of the day. No specific location given. Copters will be assigned at first light tomorrow. And, oh, they did post the more recent one that's not in Spanish, so we can look at this. Looks like the structure is threatened. Unfortunately, has gone up since we last looked at this. It's up to almost 35,000 structures threatened at this point, and you can see the size is just about to hit 200,000 acres burned. Containment is at 18% right there. And interesting to hear what their update was. Gonna definitely take a sip of water before this. So again, this is as of 7 p.m. on the Caldor Fire. They say fire behavior increased dramatically in the northeast and eastern divisions early in the morning due to the expected strong winds and poor humidity. That was something that I was covering in that update that I did earlier this morning. We could already see the smoke plumes at 9 a.m. in the morning. High wind speeds on the ridge tops produce long-range spotting as the active crown fire runs reach the ridge tops. That was something else we were just looking at in that Kirkwood area. We actually looked at the weather stations, the weather station itself, which is right on the ridge line over here, and that weather station had recorded a 52 mile per hour wind gust, while at the same time seeing relative humidity in the teens. So not a big surprise that we had so much activity right in this area where we had those extreme winds and that low relative humidity. Again, that is still one of my main concerns moving forward in that spot right there. So spotting distances were over 1 mile. So that ties into the fact that it's those two things I was just talking about. When the winds are 50 miles per hour, you can imagine that it's pretty easy for it to, and we're not looking directly at where that weather station was. So we'll just estimate that in this area, maybe if on this ridge line we were seeing winds at 52 miles per hour and that peak gust today, let's just be conservative and say it was 30 miles per hour right here. That's still plenty to be able to pick up a burning ember and then create these spot fires that you see. And it wasn't just this area, the fire where we saw some spot fires happened in other areas. And then that's also where the relative humidity plays a very big role, because that just makes the fuels even drier. They already are critically dry because 85% of California is in that extreme drought category. We have record low fuel moisture, so those burning embers are able to be picked up, dropped into those critically dry fuels, and start those spot fires. So it looks like with those stronger winds today, that was the big thing that we were afraid about in this morning's forecast, is how those wind gusts were going to lead to spot fires, and looks like we did get some over a mile away. And he says the fire continues to back down towards Highway 50 in multiple locations and continues to threaten the control lines in divisions G and H. So we can check out exactly where that is. Divisions G and H, I imagine that's up on this northeastern side. Divisions G and so divisions G and H, they're actually talking more about this area of the fire. So that was where we were also hearing the report, I believe, about some aerial operations in that area. So it seems like that was an active part of the fire today. Fire continues to back down, read that. Minimal growth has occurred in the southwest and northwest areas. Not a big surprise there, because if we look at that same map, it's the southwest and northwest parts of the fire where we have all of that containment that we have been able to pick up. Where that black line is, that's where the fire is contained. So, and we don't have many hot spots remaining over there, so not a big surprise we didn't have much growth there. Current red flag warning remains in effect through 11 p.m. on Wednesday. So that was pretty useful to read. Again, we've seen a couple reports now mention this section of the fire, but again, according to my fire progression data, it wasn't showing all that much growth there, so it must have been since this data was collected, there must have been some new spot fires that started Again, I don't usually like to use this map anymore because we've seen how wrong it's been on the Caldor Fire especially, but I do want to see if it's picking up any kind of heat detections up there. Yeah, there might be talking about that area right there. Looks like there's more heat coming up right there than in the past, and actually instead of using this, we can use our own eyes. Look in here. So certainly a lot of activity on the northeastern section, no surprise there, but you also do notice that smoke plume right there that we weren't seeing as much of yesterday, and you also notice that it's blowing more straight to the north, which means it's more southerly winds pushing that smoke farther towards the north. So that's going to be an area that we have to keep an eye on, because that was a part of the fire we didn't talk about very much throughout this live stream, but looks like that was a part of the fire that did see a large amount of growth throughout the day today. And then I think we're updated with that. We just read the most recent Cal Fire update, and I think if you're new to the live stream, I can just summarize basically what we've been looking at so far. Again, huge apology to anybody who's been asking questions in the live chat. I haven't looked at the live chat in probably over an hour. Hopefully I've had sound and I haven't just been buffering this entire time. But reason I wanted to do that is because we did have some buffering issues earlier, and I wanted to just focus on the one screen to make sure that I could get this information out there. So just looking at the Caldor Fire and the Dixie Fire as well. Actually, I will do a quick Dixie Fire update. You can see a large amount of activity on the Dixie Fire right now. Most of that is on that southeastern section of the fire, and I don't have the other fire perimeter data for that one, so we are going to check out where it is. You can see where those red dots were. That's the relative area where we had a large amount of growth on the Dixie Fire yesterday. I believe it was about 30,000 acres that burned. Still seeing a large amount of activity there, but you notice not looking like it's in any of those structures yet. Again, we can't always trust this data, but it does look like that's a very active part of the Dixie Fire. So that's something that we're going to have to watch over the next couple of days, because all those orange dots that you see are communities, and you can see how active that part of the Dixie Fire has been today. So I do believe that there are some new evacuation warnings and orders in place for the Dixie Fire. So apologies for not covering the other fires as much throughout this video, but the real critical situation is on the Caldor Fire, where it's right up against the community. So I've been focusing about 95% of my time just on that one going forward. I'm interested to see. Now, actually, let's go to InciWeb. That one usually gets updated first. I'm interested to see what the Dixie Fire got up to throughout the day today. Man, that would be pretty funny if my sound wasn't working for the last 2 hours and I was just talking to myself here. But again, that I say that because, again, I haven't looked at the live chat in about 2 hours. So hopefully it is all still working. But looking at the Dixie Fire, you can see that that is now up to 820,000 acres, 48% containment there. I imagine does... Oh, wait. Go to incident. The information below is for the wrong fire. So yeah, 820,000 acres. So still the second largest wildfire in the history of California. I didn't think we were going to take over the August complex to become the largest wildfire in the history of California, over 1 million acres, but given that large flare-up that we had, we're going to have to certainly keep an eye on the Dixie Fire, because it looks like it's picked up in intensity with that red flag warning fueling the conditions over the last couple of days. And then summaries here are pretty long, so I'll just leave that to you guys to read. That's in that InciWeb. Go to Dixie Fire. First, I do just want to get back down to the Caldor Fire to wrap up the most important information that we learned throughout this video. So, according to the most recent updates that I've been able to find, again, a lot can change in the course of since I got those updates, so always take what I say with a grain of salt. But according to the most recent information I've been able to collect and the most recent fire perimeter maps, let's turn off what burned throughout this afternoon. So that's the map that we were looking at this morning. Our key areas of concern were that eastern finger that is pushing towards Kirkwood, and then also this entire Christmas Valley area pushing into Myers as well. Main reason for that concern was that red flag warning that was seeing relative humidity digits in the single digits. We actually confirmed that by looking at some of the weather stations in this area. We saw 9% relative humidity right near Myers. And then we also confirmed the gusty winds. We saw a 52 mile per hour wind gust near Kirkwood. But that's part of the reason we were so concerned about these areas, is with those southwesterly winds. The last thing we wanted to see was this continue to push in here. And we did end up seeing some growth on this fire. Just looking at the latest map that I was able to find. Again, you might have missed it just because it's kind of hard to see, but it's that dark red shaded color is the most recent data. So if we zoom into Christmas Valley, you can see it made a little push down to Highway 89, but looks like they stopped it on Highway 89. And again, everything I'm about to say, this map is from 445, and we have seen a large amount of growth since then. So there may be some updates since this, but based on this and all the other information we've been able to collect, everything I'm about to say is as far as I know up to this point. So, big disclaimer there. But looking at the shading, we also saw some growth coming down farther, moving farther down from in the same direction we saw mostly yesterday, coming down from Echo Summit and the Echo Lake area, but looks like it was stopped before it got into those streets there. Looks like we did have some growth on this. Just let's get our bearings here again. That's looking at the very tip of this fire perimeter that's moved up towards Christmas Valley. Those southerly winds did push this farther to the north, but looks like that has stopped before it got to that street right there. My main concern coming into today was Myers, because we have a lot of fire activity going on right here, and we had those southwesterly winds that were just going to try to push this fire directly into this area. And as of the most recent fire data, again, we'll turn this around so we can see it a little bit better. As of the most recent data, it looks like that fire perimeter has been stopped right along those streets right there. So absolutely unbelievable job done by our wildland firefighters throughout the day today. I honestly don't know how they did it, considering we had single digit relative humidity and red flag warning wind gusts, or wind gusts that led to a red flag warning, I should say. How they were able to herd this around these communities is unbelievable. And again, this map is a couple of hours old at this point, but we haven't seen any updates that would make us think any otherwise, that it's still outside of these communities. So that is amazing to see there. Now, one spot that I do want to focus on though, so I'll zoom out and we'll reorient ourselves because I'm about to use some directions here. So that's relatively north in the right direction. You can see where we did have the largest amount of growth today on the Caldor Fire. That was as of this morning. Then as of the most recent fire progression map, you can see that dark shaded color went all the way up to, just want to trimmer peak right here. I wanted to see the elevation. Looks like it goes up to about 3,022 meters. So that was something that we were actually talking about before we got this map, is we're looking at this and we're seeing where the fire was right here. As we were saying earlier, fires love to move uphill because it's able to preheat those fuels. And because of that, it was able to just rip up this mountain right here all the way up to Trimmer Peak. We had about 5 miles of growth in that area. And that does look to be the area that grew the most on the Caldor Fire today, at least according to this map. But you notice that in that area, there's not nearly as many structures, and we're not seeing that heat progression into the Myers area as of right now. Now, the other spot that we were very concerned about earlier today was this Kirkwood area. This is somewhere where we actually looked at the weather observations on this ridgeline and saw a 52 mile per hour wind gust. So because of that, you can see where the fire perimeter was as of this morning, shown in that red color. Then with those strong winds and the low relative humidity, some of those burning embers were able to be picked up, create some spot fires around Kirkwood Lake. In the Cal Fire update, that they said they had to pull back some resources and basically retreat because of the changing situation with the spot fires and those strong wind gusts continuing to push that fire forward. But in this area, I will go back to, I believe Trish sent this in. Caldor Fire is staying back from Kirkwood and the mountain ski resort thanks to the hard and dangerous work of firefighters. Air tankers have herded away the fire, says Cal Fire. Here's a look right now. So again, great news coming out of Kirkwood right there. That was from 40 minutes ago, so pretty recent update right there. So I would say the theme of this video is gigantic thank you to the 3,904 personnel on this fire. The work that they were able to do throughout the day today was and throughout this entire fire, and especially last night, to keep all of that activity out of Christmas Valley. Still, maybe in the future I'll try to interview some of the wildland firefighters to actually figure out what kind of strategies they were putting in place in this area and exactly how difficult that fight must have been, because we had, again, anytime you see red flag conditions, it means easier fire starts, potential for rapid spread of new and existing fires, and we did see rapid spread. We saw spot fires coming over the valley, and somehow they were able to keep it out of these areas. So I think the theme of this video is we owe a giant thank you to all the wildland firefighters out there. And again, I say that with just, so gigantic thank you to the wildland firefighters out there. What I'm trying to transition to is saying that, unfortunately, this fight isn't over yet. Just looking at that red flag warning, it reminded me the red flag does continue until 11 p.m. Wednesday. We did still have a fair bit of activity throughout the day today. And again, I'm only as good as the information that I've been able to collect, so there may be some newer things that we need to find out about. But as of right now, seems like overall much better day today than we were expecting, given that today was actually the peak of this red flag event. So with all that being said, I would say overall good news throughout the day today, but we do still have that red flag warning continuing into tomorrow. So I will definitely do another one of these updates tomorrow night. I don't believe I'm going to be able to do an update tomorrow morning, as I'm fuel sampling for the Fire Weather Research Laboratory. We're working on some of the data that goes into that wildfire model that we were looking at earlier in this video, and it's important to have the most recent kind of data to look at. So I will be doing that in the morning, so I won't be able to do one of those concise updates again, but I will be back here tomorrow evening to make sure that we're following this event in real time. So last thing I should say is, I know I said a lot of good news throughout this video, but just based on the satellite imagery, we did have a lot of activity on all of our wildfires today. Didn't even mention the monument or the river complex. Apologies about that. I'll try to go into that more in future videos. See a lot of activity on the Dixie fire and still a lot of smoke coming off of the Caldor fire. So with that being said, always stay updated with the local evacuation orders and warnings. I do know there are some new ones out there, so always get that information straight from the source. My thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who has been affected by these wildfires, and more than anything, massive thank you to all the wildland firefighters out there for doing such an incredible job. So I hope this video was helpful, and I will be back tomorrow night for another update. I will get through this red flag event, and then once we get through this red flag event, it looks like things are going to be improving into the future. So really just have to get through tomorrow. I'll be back here tomorrow, and I can see lots and lots of comments in the live chat. You can see that that's the first time I've looked at it in probably an hour and a half now. So again, apologies for missing all of those comments that were coming in the live chat. I do actually want to end this video in a certain way. So looking in here, looking at the wind gusts, that's the biggest factor that leads to that fire spread. Again, tomorrow, this is the big thing that you need to know. I'm doing this because I'm not able to do that concise update tomorrow morning, so I just want to give you the weather forecast for tomorrow so you know what to expect. Just zooming in here, let's pick Myers again. That's always a good pick. You can see that tomorrow does still have some critical conditions. Wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Warm temperature, temperature is actually dropping down a little bit. And then relative humidity still at critically low values in the low teens to single digits. So that is why we still have that red flag warning again tomorrow. So going to be very important to follow this throughout the day tomorrow. As we get into Wednesday, looks like that relative humidity starts to pick up a little bit, which is good news there. Friday looks like it's still pretty dry over Thursday and Friday, but let's see what's going on with the winds. So Wednesday, when we have that red flag, the wind gusts are still at 35 miles per hour. If we look at Thursday, looks like they're at 34. Nope, it was just taking too long to update. So Thursday, they are dropping down into, let's just wait a second, make sure it is the right value, dropping down into the 20s. Friday looks like it's dropping down even more. So Friday looks like we might hopefully be getting a little break for Labor Day weekend. I would say the big thing is that we just get through tomorrow, then that red flag warning ends, and then hopefully things will be trending upward as we move past that date. It looks like the fire weather forecast will be getting better as we get into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but that's something that I will just continue to update you on in future videos. So again, just wanted to say that quick weather forecast because I won't be able to do that concise update tomorrow morning. But the last thing to wrap it up is massive thank you to the wildland firefighters out there. Unbelievable work throughout the day today. Really can't believe that this fire, for the most part, has been kept out of a lot of those communities. I'll see you all back again tomorrow when I do another update and forecast. Again, I hope this video was helpful. Apologies again for not being able to look at the live chat at all. I'll see you all tomorrow, and thanks for watching.